Assalamu alaikum. I'm Siahatnis from Kala Fund School. Children, I really hope that all of you are safe at home and following the instructions given by HPA. As you all know, staying at home for this long is really boring, isn't it? The one thing I really miss being is hang out with friends. I'm sure you will miss it too. Just like us, there are four friends, Shan, Aina, Yaik and Misha, who are also currently facing the same situation. But they didn't want the lockdown to take over everything. So they called each other, discussed and planned to have a small pizza party at home. But how is that possible? Can you think of a way they can have a pizza party in this lockdown? Let's see how they planned it. They planned to order pizza at the same time in the evening and have a video call pizza party. Interesting, right? Now, let's relate this with our lesson by checking how they divided their pizza and then how much they ate.
Here is the picture of friends I told you about. I will be looking at how they divided their pizza and the amount of slices they ate. Also, I will be forming ratios on it. Now let's see how Shan divided his pizza. He divided his pizza into 2 equal slices, and from that he ate 1/2 of it. That means the ratio of the slices eaten to the total number of slices will be 1:2. Aina, she divided her pizza into 4 equal slices, and from that she ate 2 slices. That means her ratio is 2:4. Yaik divided his pizza into 6 equal slices, and from that he ate total 3 slices. That means his ratio is 3:6. Misha, she divided her pizza into 8 equal slices, and from that she ate total 4 slices. So her ratio is 4:8. Now children, can you see anything similar from the picture? Is there any relation between the 4 ratios? Yes. No matter how you slice it, the amount of pizza you eat is the same. So, even though the ratios are different, it represents the same relation. As you all can see, the amount of pizza they ate is the same. They ate 1/2 of the pizza, which means even though the ratios are different in numbers, but they are the same or equal. Therefore, all these are equivalent ratios. This is our topic for today. Learning intention. We are learning to form equivalent ratios and determine if two ratios are in proportion. Here is the success criteria for today's lesson. You will be successful if you can form 3 to 5 equivalent ratios correctly, determine if two ratios are equivalent, and find the missing quantity in equivalent ratios. Now let's check what is equivalent ratios. Equivalent ratios are just like equivalent fractions. You can write it as a fraction just like this. The first term goes to the numerator and the second term goes to the denominator. If two ratios represent the same quantity, then they are equivalent. Now children, we can simplify the ratios given here, and when we simplify it, we get 1:2. That means they represent the same quantity, which is half of the pizza eaten. Equivalent ratios have different numbers but represent the same relationship, as you can see from the diagram. Now the question here is, how do we form equivalent ratios? Let's see. Equivalent ratios are the ratios formed by multiplying or dividing the terms of the ratio by the same number. As you can see from this diagram, the first ratio 1:2. If you multiply with 2, you will get the second ratio, which is 2:4. And if you multiply 2:4 with 2, you will get the last ratio 4:8. You can even use division. Like if you use 4:8 and divide it by 2, you will still get the second ratio, which is 2:4. If you choose multiplication, you can get infinite numbers of answers because you can multiply by any number that you want. But be careful with division because if it is division, you have limited answers. That is because you cannot divide by just any number. It should be a common factor for both the terms. Now let's do an example on it. Form equivalent ratios of 1:6. Now children, remember that we can either multiply or divide both the terms of the ratio by the same number. Let me choose multiplication first. If it is multiplication, it can be any number, 2, 3, 10, 100 or 500 even. Let me multiply it by 100. See, if you multiply it by 100, you have to multiply both the terms by 100. 1 times 100, which gives you 100, and 6 times 100, which gives you 600. So our new ratio is 100:600. Again, you can multiply or you can even divide. This time, let's divide it. And remember, if it is division, you have to divide by a common factor. Now this ratio 100:600. Can you divide it by 2? Yes, you can. Can you divide it by 3? No, right? It's because even though you can divide 600 by 3, 100 is not divisible by 3. Do you remember the divisibility rule? Good. So we cannot divide our ratio by 3. Can you divide it by 4? Yes, right? Now I'm going to divide this number by 5. How do we know that this is divisible by 5? Because the last digit is a 0 in both the terms. Now 100 divided by 5 gives you 20. 600 divided by 5 gives you 120. Again, our new ratio is 20:120. Now you can use 20:120 to get another ratio. This time, let's do division again, but with a different number. Now children, can you divide it by 2? Yes. By 3? No. By 4? Yes. So let's divide it by 4 now. Okay. 20 divided by 4 will give you 5. And then 120 divided by 4 will give you 30. So our new ratio is 5:30. Now that we have found some ratios, let's see the equivalent ratios of 1:6. It can be 100 is to 600, 20 is to 120, 5 is to 30. Let's do another example on it. Form equivalent ratios of 15 is to 25. This time I am going to use fractional method. So first of all, write the ratio as a fraction. When you do that, the first term goes to the numerator and the second term goes to the denominator. Now decide whether to multiply or divide your ratio. I am going to use division first. If it is division, you need to divide by a common factor. Now think of a factor from that you can divide both 15 and 25. We can divide it by 5. 15 divided by 5 gives you 3. 25 divided by 5 gives you 5. So when we simplify the fraction, we get 3 over 5. But remember, we are not reducing fractions. This is forming equivalent ratios. So we need to write our fraction back as a ratio. That means the new ratio is 3 is to 5. Now let's do by multiplying. Again write the ratio as a fraction. 15 over 25. Now decide on a number that you are going to multiply. If it is multiplication, you can multiply by any number. This time let's multiply it by 2. 15 times 2 will give you 30. 25 times 2 will give you 50. Again, this is ratio, so we need to write our answer back as a ratio. That means the answer is 30 is to 50. So an equivalent ratios of 15 is to 25 can be 3 is to 5, 30 is to 50, and it can be many more. Shall we do a small activity now? It is called equivalent ratios math. Here is a table of different ratios, and it includes 5 groups of 3 equivalent ratios. Children, write it down and try to find at least 2 groups of equivalent ratios. You will be given some time to complete it and will be reminded with the last 10 seconds. Okay, now that the time is up, I will highlight the groups of equivalent ratios with different colors. You can self-mark your answers. Now that we have found all the answers, let's categorize it with colors. 1 is to 5, 2 is to 10, and 4 is to 20 are equivalent. When we multiply 1 is to 5 with 2, we will get 2 is to 10. If we multiply 1 is to 5 with 4, we will get 4 is to 20. So they are equivalent ratios. 4 is to 7, 12 is to 21, and 32 is to 56. If you multiply 4 is to 7 with 3, you will get the second ratio 12 is to 21. If you multiply 4 is to 7 with 8, you will get 32 is to 56. So they are also equivalent ratios. 2 is to 9, 6 is to 27, and 12 is to 54. See, when we multiply 2 is to 9 with 3, we will get 6 is to 27. And if you multiply 2 is to 9 with 6, you will get 12 is to 54. 5 is to 6, 25 is to 30, 40 is to 48. Now children, you can think of how it got equivalent. 3 is to 8, 12 is to 32, 15 is to 40. Now children, did you get any of it correct? Well done. Now the question here is, how do I know that two ratios are equivalent? Or let's say, how do I know that two ratios are in proportion? There is a new word now, proportion. What is proportion? A proportion is an equation which states that two ratios are equivalent. It can be written as two equal fractions just like this, or using a colon like this. 1 over 5 is equal to 2 over 10. If you simplify this fraction, you get 1 over 5. That means they are equal. When we have equivalent fractions or equivalent ratios, then it is said to be proportional or in proportion. Now let's do an example on it. 4 is to 5 and 12 is to 15. Are they equivalent? To check that, first write your ratios as a fraction. Now find the cross products of it. Cross products means that you are going to multiply the numbers diagonally. So 4 times 15, which gives 60. 5 times 12, which also gives you 60. Now can we decide whether these ratios are equivalent? If the cross products are equal, then the ratios are equal. So, since the cross products we got the same number, which is 60, we can say they are equivalent ratios. When we have two equivalent ratios, it is in proportion. So the ratios 4 is to 5 and 12 is to 15 are in proportion. Yes. Let's do another example on it. 4 is to 7 and 6 is to 12. Are they equivalent? First, write your ratios as a fraction and then find the cross products of it. 4 times 12 will give you 48. And then 7 times 6 gives you 42. We are getting different answers. If the cross products are equal, then the ratios are equal. But here we got different answers. That means our ratios are not equal or not equivalent. That means the ratios 4 is to 7 and 6 is to 12 are not in proportion. Because proportion means two ratios should be equivalent. Okay, how do I find a missing term of an equivalent ratio? Here is an example on that. 12 is to x equals 9 is to 6. It says it is equal. So write it as a fraction first and then find the cross products. 12 times 6 is equal to 72 and 9 times x is equal to 9x. Now to find the missing value, you need to write it as an equation and solve it. So we get 9x is equal to 72. Now this is a linear equation. You need to solve it. To solve that, you need to divide both sides of the equation by 9. So we get x is equal to 8. Let's do another example on it. 45 is to 36 is equal to 180 is to x. Now first of all write it as a fraction and then find the cross products of it. 45 times x will give you 45x. 36 times 180 will give you 6480. Now you need to write it as an equation and solve it. So we have 45x is equal to 6480. Now to solve for x, you need to divide both sides of the equation by 45. Then we are getting x is equal to 144. This question is for you to practice. I will set the time and within that time please complete it. Time is up. Now let me discuss the answers. Reshmi used 3:5 ratio of butter and flour to bake a cake. If she used 540 grams of butter, then find how many grams of flour she used for baking the cake. Children, when we have a word problem, we need to find the key terms first. In this question, 3:5 ratio of butter and flour is a key term. Also, 540 grams of butter. Now we need to find how many grams of flour she needs. We know that these are proportional. So we can write it as a proportion. To do that, make sure to write the ratios in order, butter to flour. We can write our first ratio 3:5 and then form another ratio which is 540 grams of butter to x grams of flour. We are letting the number of grams of flour we need as x because we don't know the amount of it. So the proportion looks like this. 3:5 equal 540 is to x. Now to find the value of x, you need to write the ratios as a fraction. 3:5 can be written as 3/5 equal 540 is to x can be written as 540/x. Now we need to find the cross products. 3 times x will give you 3x. And then we multiply 5 and 540, which gives you 2700. Now to find the value of x, you need to write it as an equation. So we have 3x equal 2700. To solve it, divide both the sides of the equation by 3. When you divide it, you will get x equal 900. Now that we found the value of x, we know that the amount of flour we need. For 3:5 ratio of butter and flour, we need 540 grams of butter and 900 grams of flour. Children, did you get your answer correct? Excellent. That's all for today's lesson. Now let's recall what we learned. Equivalent ratios are ratios with same quantity. To form equivalent ratios, we need to multiply or divide our ratio. To determine two ratios are in proportion, you need to find cross products, and if it gets equal, then it's in proportion. To find the missing term of an equivalent ratio, you need to find cross products, form an equation, and solve it. Thank you.